You know that feeling when you're having the worst day possible, and then life decides to grab a shovel and start digging? Yeah, that was my Tuesday. My name's Jamie, and I deliver pizza for a living. Not exactly the career path my parents dreamed of when they sent their anxious Omega son off to college. But here we are. The thing about being an anxious person with a job that requires knocking on strangers' doors is that your brain comes up with approximately 14 different disaster scenarios for every delivery. What if they're serial killers? What if I'm interrupting something private? What if they don't tip and I have to make awkward eye contact while they count out exact change? But apartment 4B at the Meridian Complex? My brain hadn't even begun to imagine what I was walking into. I should have paid more attention to the order. Large pepperoni, extra cheese, apartment 4D. But the hallway lighting was terrible. My glasses were fogged up from the rain, and I was already running late because my roommate Marco had insisted on giving me a pep talk about putting myself out there while I was trying to leave. Just be yourself, Jamie, he'd said. Stop overthinking everything. Easy for him to say. Marco's a beta. The worst thing that happens when he delivers pizza is someone answers the door in their underwear. When you're an Omega, everything feels like a potential threat. So when I knocked on what I thought was 4D, but was actually 4B, I was already in full anxiety mode. The door swung open. And that's when my life took a very sharp left turn into absolutely ridiculous territory. The first thing I noticed wasn't the intimidating man with tattoos covering his arms. It wasn't the dimly lit apartment that looked way too expensive for this building. It wasn't even the soft music playing in the background. No, the first thing I noticed was Rachel McAdams crying on a massive TV screen. The Notebook. Someone was watching The Notebook. At 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. And crying. Oh, I said, because my brain had completely short-circuited. The man at the door, and I'm talking tall, broad-shouldered, covered in intricate black tattoos that probably told stories I didn't want to know, was staring at me with the expression of someone who'd been caught doing something deeply embarrassing. Which, okay, fair. But my anxiety brain immediately went to the worst possible conclusion. This was it. This was how I died. I'd interrupted some kind of Mafia movie night, and now they were going to dispose of me because I'd witnessed their emotional vulnerability. I'm so sorry, I blurted out, taking a step backward. I didn't see anything. I mean, I saw The Notebook, but I won't tell anyone you were watching it. I mean, it's a great movie. Ryan Gosling is very attractive. Not that I was looking at you thinking about Ryan Gosling. I just... Stop talking, Jamie. Just stop. But did I stop? Of course not. I have the wrong apartment, don't I? This is 4B, not 4D. Oh God, this is 4B. You didn't order pizza. You're just here having a perfectly normal Tuesday night emotional movie experience, and I barged in like some kind of pizza-wielding maniac. It's okay, the man said. His voice was gentle. Way gentler than I expected from someone who looked like he could bench press my entire car. And that's when I noticed his eyes were slightly red. He'd actually been crying at The Notebook. This massive, intimidating man with tattoos that probably meant he could end me without breaking a sweat had been having feelings about Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams. You want some pizza? He asked, gesturing to the box I was still clutching like a shield. I mean, since you're here. That's when my brain really went off the rails. Because in what universe does a dangerous criminal offer to share your mistakenly delivered pizza? Unless this was how it worked. You feed them first, gain their trust, and then, whatever it is criminals do to witnesses. That's very kind, I said carefully, but I should probably get going. Deliver this to the actual person who ordered it. You know how it is. I started backing toward the hallway. He stepped forward. I froze. Are you okay? He asked, and he sounded genuinely concerned. You seem stressed. Stressed. Right. If by stressed he meant convinced I'm about to become a statistic, then yes. Very stressed. Just one of those days, you know? I managed. That's when I heard it. A small sound from inside the apartment. A meow. Then another. And another. This man, this potentially dangerous, tattoo-covered man who cried at rom-coms, apparently had cats. Multiple cats. My brain made a sound like a Windows error message and completely gave up trying to categorize this situation. If you've ever tried to politely escape from what you're convinced is a hostage situation while the person holding you hostage keeps offering you snacks, you'll understand my predicament. Because that's exactly what was happening. You should sit down, Dante said. And yes, I'd somehow learned his name in the span of 30 seconds because when you think you're about to die, you pick up details fast. You look pale. Pale. Right. Because I was terrified. But he was interpreting my terror as, what? Low blood sugar. I'm fine, I said, still clutching the pizza box. Really? I should go deliver this to 4D. 4D? He frowned. Mrs. Patterson? She's in her 80s. Does she usually order large pizzas at 9 p.m.? This was a trap question. I could feel it. If I said yes, he'd know I was lying. If I said no, he'd, I don't know, realize I was an incompetent pizza delivery person? Was that better or worse than being a witness to his movie night? Sometimes elderly people have surprising appetites. I tried. One of his cats, a small gray one, chose that moment to wind around my legs. I looked down. Big mistake. Because this cat was adorable. Like offensively cute. And it was purring. That's Duchess, Dante said, and his whole demeanor shifted. Softened. She likes new people. And then, because my life is apparently a comedy written by someone with a very specific sense of humor, 3 more cats appeared. A orange tabby. A black one with white paws. A calico that looked like it had been painted by an artist having the best day of their life. How many cats do you have? I asked, momentarily forgetting that I was supposed to be escaping. 6, he said, and for the first time since I'd knocked on his door, he smiled. Not a scary smile. Not a, I'm planning your demise smile. A genuine, soft, completely devastating smile. Oh no. This was worse than thinking he was a criminal. Because now I was thinking he was cute. That's a lot of cats, I said weakly. They're rescues, he explained, and started moving into the apartment. I foster them until they find permanent homes, but these 6 are, well, they're permanent. Come in, I'll introduce you properly. And here's where my brain just gave up entirely. Because he was walking away from the door that was my escape route, and he was expecting me to follow him deeper into the apartment. This was it. This was the moment in every horror movie where you yell at the screen, "Don't go in there." But instead of running, I found myself taking a step forward. Then another. Because Duchess was still purring around my legs, and the apartment smelled like vanilla and coffee, and the notebook was still playing, and this whole situation was so far from anything my anxiety brain had prepared for that I just went with it. This is Felix, Dante said, picking up the orange tabby. He showed up during a thunderstorm 3 months ago, soaking wet and scared. He was gentle with the cat, incredibly gentle. His hands were huge, but he held Felix like he was made of spun glass. And this attention seeker is Luna, he continued, as the black cat jumped onto his shoulder. She thinks she's a parrot. I was standing in the middle of a criminal's living room, allegedly, getting the full introduction to his cat family while holding a pizza that belonged to someone else. This was either the weirdest Tuesday of my life or the beginning of a very elaborate murder plot. You know, I said slowly, I should probably. Are you hungry? He interrupted. I was just about to make some tea. Earl Grey. It's good for stress. Stress. There was that word again. As if stress was the only reason I might be acting weird around him. Not the fact that he was approximately 6 feet of solid muscle covered in tattoos that definitely told stories I wasn't brave enough to ask about. Not the fact that I'd interrupted what was clearly a private moment, and he was being inexplicably kind about it. Not the fact that his scent was doing something to my brain that I absolutely could not think about right now. Tea sounds nice, I heard myself say. What was wrong with me? Marco was going to find my body tomorrow, and the last text in my phone was going to be about putting myself out there. The irony was not lost on me. The panic attack started the way they always do. Small. Manageable. Just a flutter in my chest that I told myself was probably caffeine. Dante was in the kitchen making tea, humming along to the movie soundtrack, and I was sitting on his couch with 3 cats using me as furniture. Everything was fine. Everything was perfectly, completely fine. Except I was in a stranger's apartment. A very large, very intimidating stranger who I'd accidentally invaded and who was being weirdly nice about it. And I still had Mrs. Patterson's pizza, which meant she was probably wondering where her dinner was. And my phone had been buzzing with texts from Marco asking if I was okay, because I should have been home by now. And this man smelled like cedar and rain, and something I couldn't identify, but that was making my brain do weird things. The flutter became a thump. Then a hammer. You okay over there? Dante called from the kitchen. Fine. I called back, which was a lie because suddenly I couldn't breathe properly. This was bad. This was really bad. I couldn't have a panic attack here. Not in front of him. Not when I was already acting like a complete disaster. But my body had other plans. My hands started shaking. The room felt too small and too big at the same time. The sound of the kettle boiling became overwhelmingly loud. Breathe, I told myself. Just breathe. But I couldn't. I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't think, and I couldn't. Hey! Dante was suddenly in front of me, moving with surprising quiet for someone his size. The cats scattered. He didn't touch me. Didn't grab me or shake me or do any of the things people usually do when someone's having a panic attack. Instead, he knelt down so we were eye level. Can you look at me? He asked softly. I tried. My vision was getting weird around the edges, but I managed to focus on his face. His eyes were brown. Really brown. Like coffee with gold around the edges. Good, he said. Now can you tell me 5 things you can see? What? 5 things, he repeated patiently. Just look around and name 5 things you can see. This was not what I expected. Your couch, I managed. Good. For more. The TV. Luna on the bookshelf. That candle that smells like vanilla. The mug with cats on it. Perfect. Now 4 things you can touch. He talked me through the whole grounding exercise like he'd done it before. Like he knew exactly what was happening and exactly how to help. And slowly, gradually, my breathing evened out. The hammer in my chest slowed to a thump, then to a flutter, then to almost normal. Better, he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. That's when I really noticed it. His scent. It was stronger now, warmer somehow. Cedar and rain, but underneath that was something else. Something that made my hindbrain sit up and pay very close attention. Something that whispered, safe. Which was impossible, because I'd spent the last hour convinced he was going to murder me. But my body knew something my brain hadn't figured out yet. You're an alpha, I said quietly. It wasn't a question. I could smell it now, clear as anything. How had I missed it before? Yeah, he said, settling back on his heels. You're Omega. Also not a question. I thought. I started, then stopped. Thought what? I thought you were going to kill me, I admitted. He blinked. Once. Twice. Then he started laughing. Not mean laughter. Not mocking. Just surprised, genuine laughter. Kill you. For delivering pizza to the wrong apartment. When he put it like that, it sounded pretty ridiculous. You have a lot of tattoos, I said weakly. I have a lot of cats too. Do they make me seem less threatening? I looked around the apartment. Duchess was back on the couch next to me, purring. Felix was batting at a feather toy. The calico, whose name I still didn't know, was sprawled across the back of the armchair like she owned the place. Kind of, yeah. Good to know. He was still smiling. For what it's worth, I wasn't going to hurt you. I was trying to figure out why you seemed so scared and if I could help. Alpha instincts. Maybe. Or maybe you just looked like you needed someone to care. Oh no. Because that hit somewhere deep and unexpected, and suddenly I was looking at this man, this gentle, cat-fostering, rom-com-watching alpha, and thinking things I definitely shouldn't be thinking. Like how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Like how carefully he'd handled my panic attack. Like how right his scent smelled. I should probably deliver this pizza, I said, gesturing weakly to the box I'd somehow managed not to drop during my breakdown. Probably, he agreed. But Jamie. I looked up. When had I told him my name? Come back afterward, he said. If you want. The movie's not over, and I think Duchess has decided you belong here. I looked down at the gray cat, who was indeed purring against my leg like I was her personal heating pad. Okay, I said. And for the first time all evening, I meant it. Mrs. Patterson turned out to be exactly what you'd expect from an 80-year-old woman who orders large pizzas at 9 p.m. on Tuesday nights. Absolutely delightful and completely unbothered by my 20-minute delay. Traffic, dear? She asked, handing me a $10 tip that was definitely more than the pizza cost. Something like that. I said, because how do you explain that you accidentally invaded an alpha's apartment and then had a panic attack while surrounded by rescue cats? You don't. You take your tip and pretend your life makes sense. But as I walked back down the hallway toward the elevator, I found myself slowing down. Stopping. Looking at apartment 4B. Dante had said to come back. He'd said Duchess had decided I belonged there. Which was ridiculous, because I'd known him for exactly 1 hour, and most of that time I'd spent convinced he was planning my demise. But his scent was still lingering on my clothes. Cedar and rain, and that indefinable something that made my hindbrain purr. And he'd talked me through a panic attack like he actually cared. And he watched The Notebook. On purpose. While crying. Before I could talk myself out of it, I was knocking on his door again. "That was fast," he said when he opened it, but he was smiling. "Mrs. Patterson says hi," I lied. She'd actually asked who the handsome young man in 4B was, but I figured that was information for another time. "Come in." I paused the movie. This time, walking into his apartment felt different. Less like entering enemy territory, more like coming back. Weird. The cats greeted me like I'd been gone for days instead of 20 minutes. Duchess immediately claimed my lap. Felix started purring from 3 feet away. The calico, I really needed to learn her name, jumped onto the back of the couch and started grooming my hair. "They like you," Dante observed, settling next to me with 2 mugs of tea. "They're very friendly. They're not usually." He handed me a mug. Earl Grey, like he'd promised. Luna hid under the bed for 3 weeks when I first brought her home. Felix still won't let most people touch him. And Duchess, well, Duchess is picky about her humans. I looked down at the gray cat, who was kneading my thigh like she was making bread. "What's her story?" "Found her in a dumpster behind a restaurant downtown. She was maybe 8 weeks old, half-starved, covered in fleas." His voice went soft. "Took me 2 hours to coax her out, and even then she was so scared she wet herself when I picked her up. And now she's a princess who demands gourmet food and thinks my bed belongs to her." He scratched behind her ears. "Took her about 6 months to trust me completely. But once she decided I was safe, that was it. She's been my shadow ever since." I watched his hands as he petted her. Gentle, patient, like he understood exactly what it felt like to be scared and need time to trust. "Is that what you do? Rescue cats?" "Among other things." He picked up the remote and unpaused the movie. "I volunteer at the shelter downtown on weekends. Foster the difficult cases. The ones who need extra time." Ryan Gosling appeared on screen, looking devastatingly romantic in that way that makes you believe in love even when your own love life is a disaster zone. "You really like rom-coms," I said. It wasn't a question, but Dante answered anyway. "They're predictable," he said after a moment. "Happy endings. People figuring out how to be good to each other. It's nice." There was something in his voice. Something that made me think he didn't have a lot of predictability in his life. Or maybe not a lot of people being good to each other. "What do you do?" I asked. "For work, I mean." "Security consultation." That explained the tattoos. And the muscles. And why I'd initially been convinced he was some kind of criminal. "Like bodyguard stuff?" "Sometimes. Mostly I help businesses figure out their vulnerabilities. Make sure their people and property are safe." "That sounds intense." "It can be." He was quiet for a moment. "A lot of people out there who want to hurt other people. But there are also a lot of good people just trying to live their lives. Like Mrs. Patterson. Like you. Like me." "I'm not that good," I said. "I spent an hour thinking you were going to murder me." "You also came back," he pointed out. "Even though you were scared. That takes guts." Did it? It felt more like stupidity. Or maybe just loneliness. Because sitting here, surrounded by purring cats and the smell of vanilla candles and Earl Grey tea, watching The Notebook with an alpha who'd taken care of me during a panic attack without being asked. This was the most at peace I'd felt in months. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Sure." "When I knocked earlier, you looked embarrassed." "About the movie." Dante was quiet for so long I thought maybe he wasn't going to answer. "People see the tattoos, the size, what I do for work," he said finally. "They make assumptions. Big scary alpha who probably likes action movies and beer and doesn't have feelings. But you do. Have feelings." "Yeah." He looked at me sideways. "Apparently too many of them, according to my last boyfriend." Oh. He left because you cried at movies?" "He left because I cried at movies and fostered cats and wanted to talk about our relationship instead of just hooking up." Dante shrugged, but I could see the hurt underneath. "Said I was too much. Too intense. That alphas weren't supposed to be so emotionally available? Something like that. What an absolute idiot." "His loss," I said, and meant it. Dante looked at me properly then. Really looked. Like he was trying to figure out if I meant it, or if I was just being polite. "Yeah," he said softly. "Yeah, definitely." And that's when I realized I was in trouble. Big trouble. Because I wasn't just attracted to this man. I wasn't just grateful for his kindness. I was falling for him. Hard. If there's one thing I've learned about life, it's that the universe has absolutely terrible timing. Case in point, I was having the most peaceful evening I'd had in months, curled up on Dante's couch with 6 cats and a man who made me feel safe for the first time in forever, when someone started pounding on his door like they were trying to break it down. Jamie. My blood went cold. I knew that voice. I knew it intimately, unfortunately, and hearing it here, in this space that had started to feel like sanctuary, made my stomach drop straight through the floor. Jamie, I know you're in there. Your roommate told me where you work, and your coworker said you were making a delivery here. Marcus. My ex-boyfriend Marcus was outside Dante's door, and he sounded furious. Dante was on his feet before I even processed what was happening, every line of his body suddenly tense and alert. The gentle man who'd been scratching Luna's ears 30 seconds ago had transformed into something much more dangerous. Friend of yours? He asked, but his voice was different now. Deeper. More alpha. Ex-boyfriend, I said weakly. Very ex. Like 6 months ex. Like, I broke up with him because he was controlling and possessive ex. The pounding got louder. Jamie, open this door right now. We need to talk. Does he always show up uninvited? Dante asked, moving toward the door. Only when he wants something. I scrambled to my feet, dislodging 3 cats in the process. Don't answer it. Please. He'll go away eventually. But Marcus wasn't going away. If anything, he was getting louder. I saw your pizza delivery car in the parking lot. I know you're hiding in there with some alpha. Come out here and explain yourself. Hiding. Like I was doing something wrong by having tea with someone. Like I needed his permission to exist in the world. Jamie, breathe, Dante said quietly, and I realized I'd started hyperventilating again. You don't understand, I said. He's not going to leave. When Marcus decides he wants something, he doesn't give up. He'll stand out there all night if he has to. What does he want? Me. He wants me back. He's been calling and texting for weeks saying he's changed, that he's sorry, that we belong together. My voice was shaking. I keep blocking his numbers, but he just gets new ones. The pounding stopped. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd given up. Then I heard the scraping sound of something being inserted into the lock. Is he picking your lock? I whispered. Dante's expression went very dark very quickly. Stay here, he said, but it wasn't a request. It was an alpha command, and my body responded before my brain caught up. The door opened just as Dante reached it. Marcus stood in the hallway, looking exactly like the entitled alpha he'd always been. Tall, conventionally handsome, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. His hair was perfectly styled, his shoes were polished, and his expression was the particular kind of condescending that made my skin crawl. Where is he? Marcus demanded, trying to push past Dante into the apartment. He might as well have tried to push past a brick wall. You need to leave, Dante said calmly. I need to talk to my Omega. I'm not your Omega. I called from behind Dante, anger finally overriding my fear. We broke up, Marcus. 6 months ago. Take a hint. Marcus tried again to push past Dante. This time, Dante caught his wrist. I said leave. Let go of me, Marcus snarled. This is between me and Jamie. You have no right to interfere. Actually, I have every right. Dante's voice was deadly quiet. This is my home. Jamie is my guest. And you're trespassing. Your guest. Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Right. I'm sure that's all it is. What did you do, Jamie? Pick up some random alpha for a rebound? You always were too trusting. And that's when I snapped. Because I'd spent 6 months listening to Marcus tell me I was too trusting, too naive, too emotional, too everything. I'd spent 6 months believing that maybe he was right, maybe I was the problem. But watching Dante, who'd spent the evening taking care of me, who'd talked me through a panic attack, who fostered rescue cats and cried at rom-coms, being dismissed as some random alpha, made me see red. Dante isn't random, I said, moving to stand next to him. And this isn't a rebound. This is me moving on with my life. Something you apparently can't do. Moving on. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Jamie, we had something special. You can't just throw that away for the first alpha who pays attention to you. What we had was you controlling every aspect of my life, and me being too scared to fight back. I was protecting you. From what? Having opinions? Making my own decisions? Talking to other people without your permission? Dante stepped slightly forward, and I could smell the change in his scent. Still cedar and rain, but now with an edge that made my hindbrain sit up and take notice. Protective. Dangerous. Very, very alpha. You heard him, Dante said. Leave. Now. Marcus looked between us, and something ugly crossed his face. This isn't over, Jamie. When you get tired of playing house with your charity case alpha, you'll come back. You always do. No, I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. I won't, because I know the difference now. Between what? Between someone who wants to own me and someone who actually cares about me. Marcus's face flushed red. For a moment, I thought he was going to do something stupid. Something that would give Dante an excuse to do something that would probably end with Marcus needing medical attention. But even Marcus wasn't that dumb. We're not done, he said finally, pointing at me. This conversation isn't finished. Yes, it is, Dante said. And if I see you around here again, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation. The kind that involves the police. Am I clear? Marcus glared at him, then at me, then stormed off down the hallway. Dante closed the door and locked it. Then he engaged the deadbolt. Then he turned to look at me. You okay? I nodded, but it was a lie. Because I wasn't okay. I was shaking and angry and grateful and completely overwhelmed. And I was looking at this alpha, this gentle, protective, cat-fostering alpha, and realizing that somewhere in the last few hours, he'd stopped being a stranger. He'd become someone I could trust. Someone I could fall for. Someone I was definitely already falling for. Jamie. Dante stepped closer, and his scent wrapped around me like a blanket. Talk to me. I think I'm in trouble, I admitted. With Marcus? Because I can handle. No. With you. He went very still. What kind of trouble? I looked up at him. At his brown eyes and his concerned expression and his hands that had been so gentle with me all evening. The kind where I don't want to leave. If someone had told me 12 hours ago that I'd end my Tuesday night confessing feelings to an alpha I'd met by delivering pizza to the wrong apartment, I'd have recommended therapy. If they'd told me he'd confess feelings right back, I'd have recommended a psychiatric evaluation. But here we were. You don't want to leave, Dante repeated slowly, like he was testing the words. I don't want to leave, I confirmed. And then, because apparently facing down my toxic ex-boyfriend had given me a temporary burst of courage, I kept talking. I like it here. I like your cats. I like that you cry at romantic movies and make tea for anxious strangers and know exactly what to do when someone's having a panic attack. I took a shaky breath. I like the way you smell. I like the way you look at me like I'm not broken or too much or something that needs to be fixed. Jamie, I know it's crazy. I know I've known you for like 4 hours, and most of that time, I thought you were going to murder me. I know I'm probably projecting because Marcus was such a disaster, and you're the opposite of everything he was. But, Jamie, what? Breathe. Right. Breathing. That was probably important. I took a breath. Then another. Dante was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Soft, but also something else. Something that made my heart skip in ways that definitely weren't panic-related. Can I tell you something? He said. I nodded. When you knocked on my door tonight, I was having the worst day I'd had in months. Bad case at work. Client who blamed me when their security failed because they didn't follow my recommendations. I came home exhausted and angry and just done with people. He sat back down on the couch, and after a moment's hesitation, I joined him. Duchess immediately claimed my lap again, like she'd been waiting. I put on the notebook because it was predictable. Safe. I knew exactly what was going to happen, and I knew it would end well, and I needed that. He looked at me sideways. And then you knocked on my door, terrified and apologizing for existing, and something just shifted. Shifted how? You were scared, but you were trying so hard to be polite about it. Even when you thought I was dangerous, you were worried about inconveniencing me. And when you had your panic attack. He paused. I've never seen someone fight so hard to keep it together. Even when you were falling apart, you were thinking about other people. That's not exactly a superpower, isn't it? He reached over and gently extracted Felix from where he'd gotten tangled in my uniform shirt. Marcus called me a charity case. Marcus is an idiot. Maybe. But he's not wrong about one thing. I do have a habit of picking up strays. Broken things. Things that need fixing. My heart sank a little. Because that's what I was, wasn't I? A broken thing that had wandered into his space and needed rescuing. But here's the thing, Dante continued. You're not broken. You're not something that needs fixing. You're just good. Kind. Real. And when you look at me, you don't see a project. You see me. I see someone who takes care of people, I said quietly. Someone who's gentle with scared things. Someone who isn't ashamed of having feelings. Someone who cries at the notebook. Someone who cries at the notebook, I agreed. We were quiet for a moment, just watching the cats rearrange themselves around us. Luna had claimed Dante's shoulder again. The calico, I really needed to learn her name, was grooming Felix's ear. The other two were sprawled across the back of the couch like furry decorations. So what happens now? I asked. Well, Dante said thoughtfully. I was thinking we could finish the movie. Make some more tea. Let the cats decide if you're allowed to stay the night. And if they decide I'm not, then I walk you to your car and ask if you want to have dinner tomorrow. Somewhere with less accidentally interrupted movie nights and more intentional getting to know each other. I looked around the apartment, at the soft lighting and the vanilla candles and the cats who'd decided I belonged here. At Dante, who'd seen me at my most anxious and panicked and hadn't tried to fix me or change me or make me into something else. What if I want both? I said, the staying tonight and the dinner tomorrow? Then I'd say you're very wise, because Duchess has clearly decided you're her person now, and she doesn't give up easily. As if summoned, Duchess looked up at me and mrowed. Just once. Like she was agreeing. Is that a yes? I asked her. She started purring. I think that's a yes, Dante translated. And what about you? I looked at him. What do you want? He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was memorizing it. I want to see if this feeling, he gestured between us, is real. I want to know what you're like when you're not scared. I want to show you that not all alphas are like Marcus. I want to introduce you properly to all the cats and learn what makes you laugh and figure out if you're always this brave or if tonight was special. Tonight was definitely special. Good special or disaster special? Good special. Very good special. He smiled then, the soft, genuine smile that had been my undoing in the first place. So dinner tomorrow? Dinner tomorrow, I agreed. And tonight? I looked around the apartment one more time. At the life Dante had built here, full of rescued things and gentle care and quiet contentment. At the space on his couch that seemed to fit me perfectly. At the man who'd talked me through a panic attack and stood up to my ex and offered me tea and kindness without asking for anything in return. Tonight I'd like to finish the notebook, I said, and meet all the cats properly. And maybe stay. I'd like that too. So we did. We finished the movie. Dante definitely cried at the end, and I may have gotten a little misty-eyed myself. I learned that the calico's name was Phoebe, and the other two were Charlie and Max. I discovered that Dante made excellent midnight snacks, and that his spare pajamas were ridiculously comfortable, and that he had a reading nook by the window where at least 3 cats could fit alongside one person. I learned that he was careful about boundaries and consent, that he asked before he touched and gave me space when I needed it, and somehow always seemed to know exactly what I was thinking. And when I woke up the next morning with 6 cats distributed across the bed and Dante making coffee in the kitchen, humming something soft and off-key, I realized something. I wasn't just falling for him anymore. I'd fallen. Completely. And for the first time in my life, that didn't scare me. It just felt like coming home. So, I said, wandering into the kitchen with Charlie draped around my shoulders like a furry scarf, about that dinner. Dante looked up from the coffee maker and smiled. I know just the place. And that's how I accidentally fell in love with an alpha while delivering pizza to the wrong apartment. Sometimes the best things happen when you take the wrong turn. Sometimes the person who seems scary is actually the safest place you'll ever find. And sometimes 6 rescue cats are excellent judges of character. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever delivered pizza to the wrong door, you know exactly how these things can go. Trust me on this one. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next video.